So I saw this thing on TikTok. I don't know what. Anyway, sorry. I saw this thing on TikTok. And it was...
Sorry.
It was this girl explaining what blind people see and how it's like us seeing people, we assume blind people just see black, right? But they're trying to say like, no, because if I saw black, that would mean I'm seeing something. I see nothing.
I remember.
And she was trying to explain it like, imagine like I took your eye, like one of your eyes out, and I put like a finger there. That's like what I would see, if that makes sense.
What do you mean took your eye out?
Like if I took, like if someone said like try and see out of your elbow, that's what blind people see. Like it's literally just nothing. Like it's not black. Like it's just, I don't know how to like. I watched the video so many times and it took me so long to like comprehend what the fuck she was talking, like what she meant. But like I kind of get it.
Like blind people still have eyes. It's just that like
black people.
Did I say black people? No, I didn't. I said blind. Did I say? I said blind.
We'll run back.
Please tell me I said
Why
blind.
Why did it sound like black people? Run it back.
Editing Matthew from the future here to prove that I said blind people, not black people. So, anyways, enjoy the rest of the podcast. Thank you.
No, I remember seeing some, I think it was a video like years ago or sometime during COVID where some lady was like literally saying that, look into your...
She's like, imagine looking out of your elbow. Like that's what I see.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Like what I was going to say is like blind people have eyeballs, but...
Obviously.
Yes, but I'm getting there, bitch.
What the
My
fuck?
God. Because you're trying to say like try looking out of your elbow.
But
like,
that's how she's trying to get you to understand. Like it had like...
Because the whole way we see is like our brain interprets like the electrical signals that our eyes are sending. So
shit. Here
Matthew,
we go.
respectfly,
bitch.
I don't need you to tell
So
me
when
that.
I say like you
I
see
know.
nothing, I just think of like the connection to the brain is like not going. So that's why you see black. That's my thinking. Am I allowed to share the way I think?
No.
No, it's just
Honestly, thank God Matthew is here because how do we know how blind people see?
What?
I took 2 years of biology for no reason.
How would we know that like it's
You
the
didn't
chemical
mention
in your
like
brains?
well explain to me then how biology like explains your idea, which is that they don't see black, they
That's
see
not what I'm
something else.
getting at. Like you explaining how we see and like the connections to your brain.
Yeah, that's
No shit.
that's the reason why I think this. What do you want me to just say? Like I think they see black, and then what? We're just gonna. That's it. Okay. I'm justifying my reason.
I think we're moving
Girl.
on. We're missing the point, but anyways, that's not the point.
There's a whole other
We'll
thing
catch you
too.
again. We'll catch you again.
Anyways,
There's a whole other thing too, where like people who are like classified as blind, like are just very very blurry vision. That's
Right.
a whole other
yeah,
thing.
My
there's
mom
different-
was, like,
different kinds of blindness.
Almost legally blind, I think, technically.
Yeah, there was one lady who was like, she was like, I don't see black. I see like in her vision, it looked like a big yellow cloud was what she was in.
Yeah.
And
Like, light was
basically
still
the
getting
point is that
through.
like they were trying to say like us closing our eyes like this and seeing black is not what they see. Like that's not what I'm just like, I'm sure you can't group all blind people together because I'm sure it's different for everyone, but us like putting our eyes over or our hands over our eyes and being like, oh, this is what it'd be like to be blind. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's not
nothing.
Because you're
what
just
it's like.
seeing your eyelid.
Yeah,
closed,
basically
I
they're like,
guess.
we don't see black, like we see nothing.
Yeah.
Like seeing black would imply that you see something.
I guess I know like what you're getting at. It's like but like it's so hard for us to imagine because we've never known anything else. But I
No.
understand like the feeling of like I picture it as like imagine you only have other senses, like because we're so used to having vision as a sense, but like they just don't have the whole entire sense of vision.
Yeah.
So they don't even have that like receptor or something to like, because when we think of that we think, oh, you're just seeing black. It's like no, you're not even seeing.
It's not,
You can only
it's
feel
nothing there.
and touch and smell. So it's
Seeing is not even an
imagine
option.
living without that sense at all.
Yeah.
I'd want to know, like, the perspective of someone that previously could see.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
then they would probably be able to describe, maybe be able to, it might still be hard, but I
Yeah.
feel like maybe be able to, like, make it make sense. Because I'm thinking, like, okay, they're saying we don't see black, but it's like,
Then,
how
like,
do you know what,
Yeah, like how do you
Yeah.
know what black looks like?
you know?
It's like I could really rant about it forever because like it's just one of those things like I don't understand, like I don't get it.
I'm not trying to go back to like science or whatever, but like with the brain, I feel like shut the fuck up. Let me fucking talk. Damn. So So I don't want to.
Shit.
I think that like, you're trying to imagine like, they say that they see black or whatever, but that like the brain can like play tricks on you. Like, you know how like your eyes technically see things upside down?
I'm sorry.
Bitch.
I'm not laughing
Yes
at you.
or no?
I'm just sorry.
Your eyes see things upside down.
Yes or no?
We know this,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yes.
And how if you were to wear glasses that flipped your vision, eventually your brain would compensate.
Yes.
So my understanding of like, if you're like completely blind and like it's literally that your eyes do not communicate, is that your brain would like compensate and like almost create something. Because the only reason you see is because your brain is working. If your brain wasn't working, you can't see. Right? So like I feel like your brain would almost compensate and like create things, and that's what would be so hard to describe, because our brains are not calibrated to do that, because we have eyes that work, that provide the brain with the information.
Okay.
That's like, I don't know, because it's kind of like, when if you lose a sense, the other ones get stronger or whatever. Like, you can't describe that to other people because your brain and your body is just adapted. So
It's a weird concept to think about.
it's insane, yeah, because it's such a vital thing. Like,
Couldn't imagine it. And I also think when we think about like, oh my gosh, like being blind, like that would be crazy. But then like for them, like that's all they know.
It's not like it really
And
isn't.
it's that's how it's been for them, for people who are born blind.
Yeah.
And then like, of course their other senses are so heightened that it's like they can do things that we can do, and it's like fine for them, because our other senses are not as heightened as theirs are. But
yeah.
weird thing to think about.
I have this fact that you might have heard of it because I did before, but don't worry, guys.
No, okay, speaking of facts, one of my coworkers was like, oh my gosh, I was watching your podcast, and like the fact about the seals or whatever, and I was like, oh no.
I told you.
My mom was so confused.
People like it, unfortunately.
Because we like bleeped it and stuff, and she was like, "Wait, I don't understand. Like, what?" I had to explain it to her what you were talking about, because she was like, "I don't understand. Like, what did they do?" And I was like,
I'm sorry that you have to have that. It's better if you just know. Like, you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, then you don't have to like explain it. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's the the very real truth of animals. The world is running out of helium. Did you guys know that?
Really
Interesting.
Like, I think in the next, let me find like the exact amount, because like I think it says like Earth's helium is going to run out within 15 to 20 years.
Is it because like it floats or whatever?
Yeah.
So it's all gone.
So like
up in the
literally
atmosphere?
like we have like
How do we get helium?
the United States reserves were purchased in 1925 and will be gone in only 100 years from getting it. There's reserves of helium. So once helium is released into the atmosphere, it's gone forever, and we're literally running out of it. So enjoy your little balloons, and maybe go and do like the little air balloon things, like like the hot air balloons. I gotta do that. I gotta do that.
That has nothing to do with helium.
Hot air balloons don't use helium?
No.
Oh,
It's
right.
just-
It's the light. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't know. When you think about it, the math
No,
of it.
it's not about that. I agree. Yes. But
Like, come on. But yes, I did know that. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, just enjoy your little helium balloons, because it's gonna run out.
I don't
at
really
least
give a
it's
shit
not
about
as bad as the
helium.
previous fact, but my God, Kelsey, like all your facts end with like enjoy your balloons, kids, like because it's gonna end. It's all gonna
It's
die.
always something bad.
Like, something's ending. Something's That's crazy. Like how do we get helium? We're like reserves.
Yeah,
we just have a bank of helium chilling somewhere.
It's a
like
non-renewable resource, so
we can't create it. It's an element.
this is how total helium brings value to its investors and other stakeholders by performing the important work of helium.
But it's not helium being like
storage.
stocks. Invest in helium.
Like what?
literally.
Helium is the second most abundant element in the universe, with hydrogen being first. However, it's running out? Question mark. Make
well,
it
then
make
what the
sense.
fuck does that mean for the rest of the
But it's the
non-abundant
only
ones?
element on the periodic table which is non-renewable resource on order.
The only element?
That's what it's saying.
What
here.
about like uranium or whatever? I thought that like dies and shit.
Couldn't tell you.
Interesting.
You know what I just thought of?
What?
The vibranium.
Wait, did I say this, or was this you're just literally just thinking?
No,
of-
I'm just thinking about
Yes,
it, because he
okay.
said uranium,
Oh my
and I was
God.
like thinking in my head, what about vibranium?
You can't even say it with a regular accent. Oh my
No,
God.
'cause what is it if
Yeah.
not with an
That's
accent?
crazy. I mean, yeah, I guess everything that we have is like, finite in a certain way.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Helium. It just
I thought you were
floats
gonna
up
say
in
way
there.
longer than that. I didn't think you were gonna say. What did you say? 15 to 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm
thought
sure
you
we'll
were gonna
come
say
up with
100
some
years or
type of like
something.
artificial version of it.
Yeah. Possibly.
Because whenever someone's like, "Oh, this is gonna happen," and it's always like in 100 or 200 years from now, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be here. So.
Yeah, so
Ain't my
not my
problem.
shit, you know, it'll be my
Not
kids'
that I don't give a
problems,
shit,
you
but,
guys
like,
wanna have,
period.
like, okay, anything else? Okay,
Nope.
I have a question. What are your thoughts on children having imaginary friends? And
Mental illness. No.
thank you.
Oh, is it?
No,
I mean,
it's giving
kind of.
freak. Like, why do you have? No. And let me elaborate.
We love all children. We love, you know. Maybe we
Let
shouldn't
me
even talk about
elaborate.
kids because last time we talked about.
Oh, good point. But like,
But this is not them
this is different.
getting
Yeah.
hurt.
I'll tell you, I guess my perception of it and my understanding. When I think of imaginary friends, I think of like kids that like have an imaginary person, like an animal that talks that they speak to. Like, no, don't sit in that seat. Mr. Bubbles is there. And then you literally can't sit there. You're sitting on him. You're hurting him. And
That just
like,
leads into like pick me behavior too, being like, oh, really? Now he's sitting here? It's like, of course he's sitting. Like,
but as a child, like, you know, you're doing that. And then like you go to school and like kids are playing.
continue. I didn't turn.
Matthew didn't turn off his do not disturb.
Well, I turned it
That's
back
what you heard.
off. Yeah, and she's checking too. Yeah. You're just lucky.
I was not the one
I
who
was
had
the
a
scapegoat.
notification.
Well, exactly. You just got lucky. Anyways.
And so,
You didn't see that one, but
What?
anyways.
and so
Which one?
you
Nothing.
snitch.
No, because if I'm getting dragged, so are you.
What is you getting dragged for? Who
you
dragged
do?
you? We were dragging him. We were supposed to.
And then he said he was the scapegoat for me.
but then what does that have to do with
Yeah.
me? Like, why am I catching? What
Did
you say?
you have
Find
Find
me
My
for?
Mom?
If you didn't keep talking, he wouldn't even like. We
No,
could have
but
let
you
it go.
had already started talking.
But
Then
he
you said
didn't
what
know.
happened.
But we could have just moved
'Cause
on.
he's
He would have
curious.
never
He was
known.
like, what?
He
And
would have
would've
never
figured it out.
known.
No, you
You
wouldn't have,
kept
'cause you kept keeping
talking.
your little mouth
You kept
shut.
talking.
You have to say,
and now we have to explain. But
what
if you just shut the
happened?
fuck up, then we wouldn't have to
shut
be
the
here.
fuck up.
Oh.
You should have started in the beginning. Then I wouldn't even have to have to
But
shut the fuck up.
You made a face,
see?
so obviously I'm gonna have a reaction.
Because I was. And then you just did that? Like, what the hell?
I'm sorry, the squeaking of the.
No,
of the
'cause
CG, like,
We were, or so I thought. Like,
Sorry.
anyways,
I'll just watch the
so-
video and find out then. Like, you forget this is recorded.
Oh, yeah.
The revolution will be televised.
Literally. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like, just that, like, whole, like, you come to school, we have recess, and you're playing with your imaginary friends. Like, I literally went to school with children that would, like, have imaginary
Really?
friends and play with them at recess and,
I
like,
don't think I've
talk to
ever-
them. And I'm like,
When I had first initially thought about it, I thought you meant like I have like my stuffed animals here, and I'm like, would you like some more tea, Mr. Bear?
No, that's not.
That's normal.
That's what I thought you were kind of meant.
Okay,
but
no.
to have like literally
Nothing.
like right here, my imaginary friend is right here. I never
No.
you know?
had that.
And like, yeah, I remember trying because you'd watch it because it's normalized. They like put it on TV and like shows and like kids just talk to them and they're like, there's so many movies coming out about literal imaginary friends that children talk to and like hang out with and shit because they can't make friends outside or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was saying this to my boyfriend and I was like, if our kid had an imaginary friend, would you be concerned? He was like, no. I'm like, really? I would be concerned.
I don't
Because
think
to
I'd
me-
be it depends
I would be-
what level it was
Yeah.
at.
Like the way that I'm like what I described, like literally they like they speak to this imaginary friend at
Kind
recess.
of scary. Imagine walking into like your kid playing whatever, and they're just like talking to nothing. Like that gives me like
You know,
insidious, like
like
ghost kind
literal
of
like
thing.
a
Oh my
literal
God.
friend.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can we just
1
second? I just thought of something. I saw a TikTok of this, like I guess it was her dad recording this girl, and he walks into her room, and she has like her teddy bear like fucking taped to the ground. And he's like, you know, this is like really concerning, right? And she had like his mouth taped shut.
It was like this, like literally, like starfish laying
And
on
then
the
she
floor.
sees him, and she like starts like kind of taking off the tape, and he's like, you know, like how this is concerning. Like,
she's
Where
like,
did she
what?
learn that from?
and she's like, what?
And then he said something like, "Who taught you
like,
this?"
where?
And she was like,
My
"No
imaginary
one
friend
taught me."
Imagine, yeah.
Like,
Could you imagine?
and he was like,
Billy
okay.
did.
Yeah.
Who's Billy? He's standing right there. Who?
I would have been like,
Immediately
we're
in.
getting a priest. We're getting like you know, sage,
Let's
whatever.
Holy water.
Yeah.
What the vampire? Fire. Because
Oh my
But I
God.
don't know. It's just like I feel like I would honestly like. Obviously, I would it's fine, you're a child, but I would have a bit of concern because to
It
me,
can
I'm
be tied
thinking
to-
something
yeah.
like you, like this is the reasons why like children or people will have something like that, like an imaginary friend to that extent, is probably because they are avoiding something or they're escaping something, or they are having like some type of struggle outside. Like maybe they like, I can just off the dome, like maybe like you're on the spectrum somewhere and you're trying and you're not, you know, you're a kid, you're not understanding why you can't make friends, you're not the same as others. So that's where I'm like, on all seriously, funny shit aside, I would be concerned because I'm like, why? Because for me, I never obviously had that. Very different, like I'm a different person, and so any other people could have different experiences, but like I had a sibling, my mom would play with me, I would have like friends and stuff, I would play with my friends and go outside and like touch grass and shit. So like we would create scenarios and like play house and stuff, but like to literally have like a figment of your imagination.
Yeah, I feel like it also would play into like as a parent, like child neglect. Like why is your kid just like making, like, you know, I don't know, there's definitely something a little bit deeper than like oh, like they're just a kid, blah blah blah. Like yeah, they are just a kid, but like why is that? Like is your kid like lonely or like, you know, what's going on?
They could literally just be a weirdo. Like, you know, you went to school with some weirdos that just you're a weirdo.
Oh yes,
you know. So also
one sitting right beside me.
Bitch, like what the fuck?
But that, with that being said,
that one sitting right next to me. Continue.
With that being said, that was my like segue into like mental health, starting with children. But now we're going to the grown folks and the problems that grown folks have. So
you couldn't even like say children.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Children.
Thank you for that. Lovely introduction to our topic today about mental health.
Specific. Do you want to talk?
We can be specific, yeah, because we're
there's
not going to get
so many things about mental health that we could talk about.
Yeah, which I might say is a good topic to have, because I feel like, at least from what I've seen, I feel like wasn't super talked about. Like when I was younger, didn't really hear people talking about mental health very much. I think now that we're older, it's more open. There's mental health awareness month or something like that now. Not now, but it's more openly talked about.
Yeah, more prominent for sure.
And I think also being, at least for me personally, being Black and having like an African family, you don't really talk about stuff like that. You know, mental health doesn't really exist in their eyes, kind of. And you know, if you have issues dealing with depression, anxiety, or whatever it is, it's like, well, why? Like just
pray to God.
Religion, pray and you know, be with family. Like, but it's really not that simple. It's I'm definitely happy that people are more open into talking about it now, for sure.
Less of a stigma is the word, I guess.
Yeah.
And now that like we're more aware of it, do you think that there's people in your family that you see like could benefit from like therapy, or like probably have some sort of any type of thing with their mental health, but like obviously they didn't have the tools before? Like,
I think everyone, I feel like everyone can benefit from any type of therapy. Just like there's so many underlying things that like after learning about, I can like be more aware of, and like I notice certain things popping up and being like, oh, like I feel like I can understand now like why that might pop up or whatever, but they don't even realize it's popping up within themselves or whatever. I feel like everyone can just benefit from it. Especially I feel like, you know, older generations too, like it only got worse, right? Like, you know, we were talking about even with our parents or whatever, it was like less talked about. Like it was never more talked about than it is right now. So it was only worse and worse for like those other generations too.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's like, you know, if you go far back enough, there's like trauma from, you know, wars and all this shit that like our great grandparents, whatever, were involved in too, that like that left some shit that left, you know, generational trauma. Like it doesn't just go away. So
yeah. At least for me personally, I think within my family, I will say like it's not like mental health, I don't think has been like completely like written off, but it's not like something you really like openly talk about. You kind of keep it to yourself, kind of thing. And I feel like now that everyone's older, I think now we still kind of keep it to ourselves a little bit, but people, I think, take more steps to take care of it or like, you know, deal with it kind of thing, rather than just like, you know, hang out with friends, hang out with family, you know. People have actually, you know, seeked medical advice or professional help and stuff like that, which I think is good. But yeah, it's at least in my family, it's not really something that like we would talk, like really openly talk to like everyone about kind of thing, you know, like you kind of keep it to yourself, you know, like maybe I'll like tell my mom, but it's not something I'm gonna like openly tell everyone, you know. So there's still that, but other than that, like I think there's definitely like some growth in there for sure from previous years.
Yeah, I'd say the same for mine. Like I think my mom was actually really, at least for herself, and now I know like she had tried therapy like years ago just for herself, and I didn't even know that, and it was cool because yeah, like she grew up in a generation where literally like no and she was super open to it, and I think had said things before about asking me if I wanted to go into therapy at times, and I was like, you know, yeah, like, you know, I think I just still need to figure things out myself before I even went into it, and then that was something that I did by myself. But yeah, I think there's people that I could see could have benefit and could still benefit from open discussions and just even like you don't necessarily have to go to therapy, but just like talking about your feelings and what you're going through, and like, you know, the weight that you're bearing on your back, because I think especially with a lot of Black women, single Black women who are mothers, they carry a lot of weight on their shoulders, and then they kind of keep it there and don't have any other avenues to express it or talk to anyone about, because they don't want to burden anyone. And yeah, I'm noticing that now people are more open to talking, which is cool. But going into like that, I wanted to ask, like, or I guess I can start, but like the moment, I guess, that you kind of realized that something didn't feel quote unquote normal for you, and that was when you kind of like then went into your discovery of like what you need to work on or whatever for mental health. Like, do you guys remember like a moment, or it didn't have the specific moment, but just something?
For me, I think I've always, like, since I was a kid, I've always been a super anxious kid. Like, it's not even just like something I knew within myself, like it was very obvious, like even from anyone else to know like that I was a super anxious kid. And you know, I'd have my little, you know, like I'd get anxious about like certain things, like, you know, everyone has like some type of anxiety, but for me it'd be like leaving home, like if I'm going like on a trip or a school field trip, like being further away from home, like what if something happens, like how am I gonna get back home, like stuff like that, or trying it was a thing. Like school field trips, I would like wake up the day of the field trip, like I'd be so excited, like weeks leading up to it, and the day would come and I'd be like sick, like I'd make myself so sick, and my mom would have to like, you're going, and I in the moment I would be so mad, like, do you even give a shit about me, like I'm throwing up, like I don't want to go. But now, like when I look back at it, like I'm genuinely so thankful that she did that, because I think my anxiety now would be so much worse if she didn't push me to go and step out of my comfort zone a little bit.
There's a way to do it for sure, because there's a way that can make it even worse, and there's a way to like, you know, comfortably push someone to step outside for sure.
And you know, I've talked about it with her, and she's even told me like it hurt me so much to like see you be like so sad, and like how badly you didn't want to go, and have to be like, no, you're going, and be kind of like tough love-ish. But she's like, but I literally had to, or
they want to enable
like,
it, and then it snowballs into
something. And then it gets worse. So she's like, I literally had to, or else like I don't even know like where we would be at now, like how would you even want to like leave the house, like I don't even know. So yeah, I've always known, like since I was a kid. Of course, when you're a kid, I didn't know what it was, like what the feeling was that I had. It wasn't until I was maybe in high school, I think. And then, you know, you hear things, and I was kind of like, maybe I have that. Like, maybe I have anxiety. And I kind of, like, did some research. And then, you know, you mentioned things to your parents, kind of. I never really said anything to my dad. I'm assuming he just knows. I would say things to my mom. Sometimes she would kind of say things that made me feel like it was kind of ignorant a little bit. Kind of like, oh, well, like, it's all in your head, you know, stuff like that, which she's gotten a lot better at now of, like, you know,
it takes
understanding a little bit more. But yeah, probably like high schoolish is when I kind of started realizing, like, okay, like, this is what's happening. And I think then is when, like, I actually started working on it and started getting a little bit better for me. Because I actually knew what I was dealing with, and I would Google things, you know, like ways to not like natural remedies, like things I can do at home, like to, you know, try and cope with it.
Did you have other people that like you could relate to, or was it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So,
but again, that wasn't till I was older when I
Gotcha.
found out, because like I said, in like my family, it wasn't really something that was talked about. And, you know, even like maybe like around the time I graduated, I kind of found out like my aunt has like really bad anxiety. And it's funny too, because I always say like me and her are twins, and it's like birthdays around the same time. Like, we're both psychopaths, we're both Geminis, like we act the exact same, and we both have anxiety. Like, it makes sense. That's why I'm like, I swear she's my mother. Like, that's my mom.
That's my mother.
Yeah, so I feel like hearing her, and like she's pretty open about it, like with me and my mom, and I feel like hearing her stories and stuff made me be like, oh, like, okay, like this is not just me, and like there's someone else who I'm super close with who understands. So that definitely helped a lot too.
There's a whole other aspect too, is like already dealing with it, but then feeling like this isn't normal, this isn't natural, like that just makes it so much worse than already feeling it to begin with. For sure.
Yeah.
And then that's like your anxiety doing that too.
Exactly. It's like you're overthinking. I'm like, okay, what's wrong with me? And then it's like, wait, why is this happening to me? Like, and then you think like, why me? Like, out of everyone, like there's other people who like have anxiety but not as bad as I do. So like, why the fuck do I have to deal with this shit? You know? So yeah.
So, and then how about now? What type of, like, how does your anxiety come out? Because before it was like leaving the house, obviously that's not, like, it's not like that. Yeah. But like, how do you feel now as you've gotten older?
I wouldn't say like leaving my house, but like, I'm an overthinker 100%. Like, I always think about like what's the worst thing that could happen right now, kind of thing.
No, literally, you'll just say some shit,
and I'm like, what if this happened? Like, I just will, like, even if I don't say it, like, I will think it. Like, even me like traveling and going away, I was like, what if the fucking plane literally crashes?
Okay, but like that
in this day and
one,
age, that's kind of valid now.
I think that every time.
I was seeing all that shit on the fucking internet, so of course I was like sitting
like,
in the seat, like gripping the handle so hard. Every little dip, I'm like, oh my god, this is it. Like, we're done.
And I feel like when you said, like, you know, you think about that too, I think there's a difference too of like thinking about it and then like actually
like literally like keeping me up at night, like thinking about it every single it was something. But I'm glad I went through it. And it's funny too, because it's like, when that's another thing that I've noticed that's different. When I was a kid, like I'd be fine, and then it would bug me until like I got there and I was there, and then like the next day I'd be like, wait, that actually wasn't so bad. Whereas when I was like going on the trip, I was so anxious like 2 days before. Like, I did not sleep at all. I was like, oh my god, like I'm getting on a fucking plane. And then it was like the day we woke up, and I was like, oh, I feel fine. And then we like got to the airport, we got on the plane, and I was like, this is fucking chill. Like, the turbulence and shit was scaring me, but other than that, I was like, oh, okay. And then it's moments at like that when I'm like, you know what, like, I have the power to not like change my mind, but like kind of control my anxiety a bit, if that makes sense. At least for me personally,
with it and kind of above it, right? You can never like get rid of it, and to have that mentality is not productive. But to be able to like self-soothe and like counteract those thoughts, like, you don't want to feel like you have to stop those thoughts from even happening, because it's just how our brains are literally wired. It has nothing to do with like, we have no control over that, but being able to counteract and like lessen its effect, basically. I was gonna ask, like, do you find that, like, because when you were a kid, it was like leaving the house specifically like without your parents, or was it like, you know, for example, traveling on a plane or whatever, like you were with your parents? Do you find that changes anything?
When I was younger, I would say it was more both. Like, even without my parents, if I was going somewhere, like, for example, we went on a camping trip, and like staying overnight without my parents, like, was, you know, something. But then even like if we were like going on vacation, like I would get super anxious, and even like if they're coming with me, right? But now I would like, leaving my house isn't like really a thing, but like going like super far, like my house is just like my comfort. Like I like to be able to, like, if I want to, like, I like to if I like to have the option to be able to like just go,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, right? So in my head, I'm like, okay, if I go somewhere far, I'm not gonna have the option like I want to go home, like I can't just go, you know. So that I think kind of messes with my head a bit, and I think meeting new people makes me super anxious too, because I'm like, okay, first impressions are so important. If I mess that up, like what is, you know, like what's gonna happen, kind of thing. I think specifically with like, not like necessarily random people, like I don't know, it's weird, like it's different every time. It's not like with random people, because I feel like when I meet people, like for example, you're put in a group for school, right? And you know, like when everyone's like super quiet in the group, like we're all introverted people, I feel like out of that group I'm always the one who's like, okay guys, like there's moments like where it kind of just like it comes and goes. But like for example, like meeting my partner's family, whew, my gosh, anxious mess, like literally like wanting to gag, like so nervous, like this is someone I could potentially be with forever, like what if the impression is bad, like what if they don't like me? And of course again all those thoughts are spiraling in my head. So that's definitely another one. And yeah, like at least right now currently I feel like those are my two biggest things. And then just overthinking situations, like little things where like I see my friends and they just seem so like nonchalant and they're like whatever, and I'm like, why am I like thinking so much? Like why can I just not be like chill and not think like what if this happens, what if that happens? So that's definitely where I am at right now. And I have done some therapy for it. I've found a lady. I was lucky to find the first person that I met up with, you know, there was a good connection, and she helped me out a lot. And then I didn't really want to go down the medication route. It just personally wasn't something that I wanted for myself. I didn't want to have to take a medication every single day. And I personally felt like my anxiety wasn't so bad that I like needed medication, just because I had those experiences where if I pushed myself, it ended up being fine. So yeah, I didn't want to do that, but you know, I talked to my doctor and she was like, you know, I can give you something that you can take when you feel like you absolutely need it, like in those situations where it feels kind of like fight or flight kind of thing, and like you don't have to take it consistently. So I did decide to do that, and even that, like I've maybe used it 3 times and I've had it for like a year. Okay. So
what was your experience with that?
To be honest with you, I kind of felt a little like placebo-ish, because I knew I was taking it and I was like, wow, I'm so calm. And I'm like, is it actually and then again, that's me overthinking. Is it me like, is the medication making me feel calm, or is it because I knew I took something that's supposed to be making me feel calm, that's gonna like, you know? So other than that, like it's been pretty positive, and I'm pretty proud of the steps that I've taken to, you know, make it better. And I'm a lot more open about talking about it with people, whereas before, like I would not tell a soul, like I would just deal with that shit internally. So yeah, like right now I'd say it's pretty good.
Yay. How about you, Matthew? I guess the first question I would want to ask you is like, what was that point when you
the time, like when you noticed? Or I don't know, I feel like hearing like Aisha's story too, like I kind of gravitate a little bit, and like certain parts kind of like remind me of like similarities, like not necessarily leaving my house, but like being like separated from my parents or something like that. Like I have a vivid like core memory of being dropped off at preschool, and I did not want to go whatsoever. I wanted to stay with my mom or whatever, at my grandma's house, whatever. And literally the teachers had me at my legs, and I was like off the ground horizontal, because I was holding onto her purse, would not let go, like making a scene. And I know, like you said, like with your mom too, I know it like probably broke her fucking heart seeing that. And like I couldn't imagine that, but like I was going through it as well. No, so it's like
I would literally
just like swear to God, I was holding on like for dear life, and I was like bawling my eyes out. You know, by the end of the day, like I was fine, but still, like it was still like terrifying, and like something that I feel like, I don't know, like it's just part of, you know, I've noticed I can be very, I definitely resonate with like having some anxiety as well. In terms of like what causes it, like I don't know, like I think about like, you know, school for example, and like meeting new people, or like the worst is like you start your classes, and this happens all the fucking time in university because you have so many classes that are very short and like you have them all the time, and it's like, okay, we're gonna go around the room and like tell us something about yourself and literally
I
instantly like,
when they
and
do that.
and the worst is like if I'm like the last one to go over something, because then I have every single person to worry about, like what am I gonna say, what if I say something wrong, what if I like, it's just like my heart starts racing, I get all sweaty, and like that's like the epitome of like the anxiety for me.
Sorry to cut you off, but you know what's another one that I always kind of dealt with? You know when like you're in class and they're like, okay, we're gonna go around and each person's gonna read a paragraph, so it's gonna go you. I was that kid who's like reading it before to make sure I like knew how to pronounce all the words, because I'm like, I don't want to be stuttering and everyone's gonna be fucking laughing at me.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I hated that shit.
For me, yeah, and it's like where I'm currently at, like I've been seeing a therapist for a while. I told her about the podcast, so maybe she's watching.
Yay!
So I gotta be careful what I say, but
I'm dead.
no, I feel like a lot of it comes from like social anxiety, and just like, I don't know, I've seen all these things before where it's like, you know, anxiety is just like a fear of the future kind of, and it's the fear of like the unknown as well, and it's just about, like I don't know how other people will react to me or respond, or whether they'll like me or, you know, judge me or whatever. And like that was like kind of the crippling thing. And like even times where like, you know, I'll be like driving and like if somebody like honks at me or whatever, like I'll get like anxious, and like I don't really know why, because it's like even if I don't do anything wrong, it's still like, oh, like what are they gonna do, or like, you know, oh my god, like worst thing like that could ever happen is like if somebody like, if I accidentally cut off someone or whatever and they're honking whatever, and then like I see their door open, oh, it's a fucking wrap. It's a wrap. Like already my heart's pounding, and then like I'm not in like a great state to be driving, like nervous as hell. But just like having that, I don't know, yeah, it's social anxiety of like, you know, being nervous or scared about like how you're perceived. I feel like even in, you know, school that kind of like came up as well, and then feeling like I had to be very protective of like, you know, what people do and don't see, as like a defense mechanism kind of thing. But yeah, like that's something that I'm trying to like really kind of study and like understand, to like I said, like learn to live with and understand, you know, why is this happening, because a lot of it too is like there's things from when you grew up that, you know, affected how that happens, and being able to understand that can help you better live with, you know, what you have now.
And when you kind of figured this out, was that something that like your family was able to push you, or was this like a realization that you made yourself, that you're like, okay, I think this is something that's happening to me, I want to either get medication, you seek therapy, or even just like find resources online and stuff like what? Like
it was definitely like on my side, like because this pretty much like most of this happened within the last like 2 to 3 years of like actually like seeking help, you know, medication for like ADHD specifically, but even like getting that diagnosis and everything was like all on like kind of my side. And so yeah, I don't know, like before then, like I feel like I've always been like a pretty emotional person too, and like my family knows that as well. But yeah, I don't know, I feel like after a certain amount of time, like after like Aisha said, like you kind of learn about these things existing because we didn't hear about this previously. You like, you know, do the research and you find things that like kind of align with like, oh, like I feel that way, like that could explain, you know, what I'm feeling and what I'm going through and all that, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Heavy on the fear of the unknown. That's, I feel like that like sums everything up, especially for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes just like literally not knowing why. Yeah. Like just feeling like super anxious and literally like chilling at home, like in my room, and just getting like a wave of anxiety and like not knowing why. Like I'm in the comfort of my house. Like what is there to be anxious about, you know? It's random, like it'll come and go, but I definitely feel you on that.
Yeah.
I like, before I go into this, but now that you've started therapy and stuff, I personally see a difference and see how much change and growth you've made, but how do you feel it's helped you navigate it so far?
I don't know. I feel like it's just like it's changed like obviously how I deal with these things and helped me better understand what they even are. I feel like, you know, these things have been with me forever, and it's just like the way that I've reacted to it or allowed it to like you know, control me has been not great at times, like, you know, being very reactive or, you know, not rude, but like, you know, I could be very like defensive of myself. And so when I feel like, you know, I'm at risk of being in a situation where I could be judged, or, you know, in a position where I'm not like kind of in control of like my perception of myself, how I'm perceived or how I come off as well, it'll like the defense mechanisms kind of make their way out. So I feel like just better understanding that. And it's just like, it's a continuous thing. Like it'll take a long time to like really figure out like everything that has kind of caused where I'm at now, and being able to like understand that. Because for me, it's all just about like, I just want this to make sense. Like I want this to like have some level of like, okay, I can understand why this is happening, and then that can lead to further like letting things go, and like having it make sense can, you know, allow me to give myself grace in those kind of moments as well.
Question that I wanted to ask you guys is, have you guys watched that season of Big Mouth when they talked about anxiety?
I think
Yes,
so.
but
It was
I don't
still like
remember.
recent times when like we were still watching Big Mouth,
Yeah.
I think. But I just remember,
Wasn't it like The Fly or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I'm gonna ask the question after I kind of explain. But like I just remember from my perspective, because I don't have anxiety, and like I knew people with it, but I might now I know that they had anxiety, but like I didn't know at the time. And like my first actual real like experience, I guess, with anxiety was you. Like I did not have any friends before that had it, and even then, like it's still
To that
you were
level.
still navigating it too, and like I didn't really know like that you had it until, because like you said, you kept it kind of like internally dealing with it. And even your anxiety, though it doesn't bleed into our friendship a lot. Like I don't see it presently. Like I can, when you say things, you're like, oh, and I'm like, oh, you're anxious, but like it's a different form of anxiety, I think. And so when I watched that, and just the way that the Fly was, and the way that it kind of like the way that they just got it was really well, and that looming like sense of like just void and not knowing, and then this things like won't leave you alone. That like I think that's what made me understand what it's like internally. So I was wondering if you had watched it, if you felt like that was kind of accurate at all, or like
I think so.
Yeah.
or if that obviously they dramatized it.
Yeah.
but
Yeah. For me personally, there has been times in my life where it's been like, it felt really like literally like a cloud or like a wave
Debilitating.
of like anxiety
Yeah.
coming over me.
Okay.
As in for like this present moment, I don't feel like that. Like I don't feel like it's at that level. But for me, like it really changes. Like 1 month will be, you know, fine. Didn't have any anxiety or any like overwhelming anxiety, I guess. And then other times it'll be like, whoa, like, and it just changes. But I think when I was younger, it was more like that than it is now.
Which is, they were young
Yeah.
too, so
Yeah.
that's probably really grasp what it was like when you were young and
Especially-
developing in hormones and things,
because
you know?
you don't even
even
really
know
know
what it
what's
is.
going
Yeah.
on, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like
Scary.
it feels a lot more intense then, because you're like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
why are these things happening to me? Whereas now, like, I'm super aware and like I understand and I know when I'm having like feeling super anxious or like not having, like, I don't really get panic attacks like I have, but like that, I don't, just like a feeling inside like something's not right. Like I'm able to identify like what it is now, so it doesn't
It's such
feel
a distinct feeling. It's hard to describe, because it's like it's not just that your heart rate's, you know, elevated, because it is. It's like I don't even know how to
it's like a
describe
full,
it.
for me it's like a full body, like just like you just don't feel right, like something just feels wrong,
Totally.
and then you just can't stop not thinking about it, if
And
that makes sense.
I was gonna say, like, I think that's what the show kind of got right with the depiction of it, is that like anxiety is like, it's that fly, but it's also that like whatever it is that you're thinking or worrying about, it's the fact that like that doesn't just go away. It's
Yeah.
always there, and that's almost a problem in and of itself, of like, I'm not only worrying about this thing, but I can't stop worrying about it and thinking about it. It's like with other things, you know, you might be able to like forget about it or like distract yourself, but with anxiety, it's like it's really hard to just like do that, because it's like, it's just, you're always thinking about it. And then for me at least too, it's like I'll think about it, and then I'll think about how the fact that I'm thinking about it and being like, oh great, like I can't just like not think about it, you know.
Like,
It really is an
never
infinite
ending.
loop.
yeah
My next question I wanted to ask is, obviously now that I've have way more people in my life that have anxiety and seen different forms of it, I think as someone without it and like quote unquote more secure, I'm navigating how to be kinder and
Understanding.
yeah, like I feel like I'm surface, like I have been understanding, but there's some things that like you said, like just that bit of like it just keeps going and I don't know how to control it, and I'm like, why are you thinking like that? Like I don't get it. Like why do you think that I think this of? Why do you think I'm saying this to you? I'm not, and I just, it was hard for me to understand. Still, obviously is and always will be, but I think my kind of wake up call is how I speak to people and like how I talk with my mom and my brother and our dynamic, even you, and like how we like we are, it can come off a certain way, and like it's took me, my partner, because like a lot of his family deal with anxiety, it took you guys kind of like seeing how you interact with people, like, and how it can be perceived even if you don't have anxiety, but like especially with people with anxiety, because you overthink everything. And I guess want to ask, like, as a friend with secure quote unquote mind and stuff, how do you feel I could do better, or how do you feel like it is in our relationship towards, like, I guess your anxiety and our friendship or whatever, if you have anything?
You've never made me feel like there was like something wrong with me or anything like that. Like, you've never done anything like that. You've had moments where like you've said things and I've kind of been like, like, what do you mean by that, right? But nothing ever like intentional, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, of course I don't think you would ever do something like that, but from when we first were friends to now, like, I can definitely see how you're more aware, like, people around you might have anxiety, and you know how they might feel about certain things or how they might handle certain situations, and how you talk to them, how that might affect them a little bit. But all in all, like, I don't really
have much. I know for Matthew, for sure, there is moments that I might have said things and you had shared how you thought, and that was my like, like, I honestly didn't know that you like, I guess, like, when I think about it, I'm like, this guy's so anxious, but like I didn't realize you literally have anxiety, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
like, I feel like that's because like you guys probably have had that kind of breakthrough already, so that's why it didn't really happen there, and like that's kind of like what we were having now. But yeah, like when you mentioned like secure, like the first thing I think about is like attachment styles, and this is something I'm like really big on right now, like I'm trying to understand, and like this is kind of like my focus in therapy right now too, is like everyone has a type of attachment style, and this in certain ways it does relate to like relationships, but never just like romantic relationships. It just has to do with like how you are with other people, and it also still affects yourself as well. So like with you, like you would have like a secure attachment to, from what I can understand, whereas for me I have anxious attachment, and so like there's all these different layers to it, but like all of these things that I'm like looking at and understanding of, like, you know, things within myself that like I notice, it's like I'm trying to kind of like bring it back to like, okay, how does my attachment style affect this? And like that's kind of like the key thing for me that's actually caused it to like make sense to me. And a lot of that comes from like I took this like quiz online for it, and it asks you a lot of questions of like how you were raised, and some of the experiences you had, and that kind of like, you know, builds who you are, and like it really does like wire your brain a certain way. And it happens within like the first like year to 2 years of your life, so for a lot of it's not really stuff that you remember necessarily, but it can definitely like obviously either carry on or stop, depending on like how the experiences past, you know, one or two like shape you and everything. But like for anxious attachment, like it's about having a negative view of self and a positive view of others, whereas secure is like positive view of self, positive view of others, and then there's avoidant, which is positive view of self, negative view of others. And so after like learning about all that, like it really kind of like clicked for me of like, oh my god, like that definitely is true. And it's weird to think about, because like in certain ways, like I don't think negatively of myself, but it's like it's subconscious. It's like it's totally not like being directly thought about, but it definitely does happen and we don't even realize it, that like I put others before myself, and that leads to things like, you know, setting boundaries and everything too. And like, yeah,
it'd be like a moment that like will just then like trigger it, and you're like, oh, but it's like not how you would think or you approach it before. Exactly. And it's funny that you brought that up, because I only really learned about this in the past year or two, because one of my friends is same as you, which is, what is it?
Anxious attachment?
Yes. Yeah. And she was like, yeah, I think you're very secure. Like, and like she would ask me questions from a secure standpoint. And I was like, oh, like I never knew about all these things. And then I have another friend that's avoidant as well. And like we had talked about it, and I was new to that as well. And it's good to know that's your attachment styles. So it helps you kind of see how to navigate.
Yeah. And like when you were saying like, you know, what can you do to help or anything like that? Or what are you like, I don't know, it's like, it's hard to explain, because it's like the ultimate goal is to have a secure attachment, and can absolutely be done. Like that's my goal with it, is to resolve the negative view of self, because I you know, have a decent positive view of others, whereas somebody who's avoidant has, you know, positive view of self, negative view of others. Like, it's about learning the aspects, like for example with like me and you, it'd be about learning your positive view of self, right? Because I already have a little bit of positive view of others. So to get to a secure relationship or secure attachment style, that's kind of like what I would need. So it's kind of just about like obviously understanding like my attachment style, but like still on my end too, like seeking, you know, things from you as well to like to grow as well, because it's like it's a two-way street. Like I don't just expect you to just accommodate these things and like let things go or whatever. It's about me also like, you know, doing the work as well to like make you aware too, because if I'm not like being self-aware too, that like actually I'm being anxious right here, it's not just up to you to be like, oh, you're being anxious, like I'll just let it go, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't until like that moment where I realized that I was like, oh, okay, because one of my other friends, like I know that, and like very different types, obviously, like it's different per person, but like it made me, I think now I understand like the best way for us to communicate based off of like me being friends with that person, which is cool. It's like, I don't know, I find it's just nice to like see like how you can be supportive and like of your friends, and just like how like, you know, experiences.
I feel like not even just for you, like for anyone in general who might be listening, who might know someone who has anxiety or is dealing with whatever, I feel like for a lot of people with anxiety, the best way to support and help that person is to try to be like as understanding as possible, even if you don't get it. Like just, you know, if it comes to like, you know, going out and like, you know, they're canceling plans and stuff like that, not making them feel bad for it, and actually understanding like, okay, you know what, like I'm gonna give you some space, like, but if you need me to talk, like I'll be here, kind of thing. I think some people kind of did that to me, like almost making me feel bad for you know, not wanting to do certain things, or like, you know,
and that does not help the anxiety either, because that's another part too
so much worse
that I'm thinking about too, is like guilt. Like the guilt that you feel as well, like literally makes it so much worse, because not only are you like, oh, I feel anxious about going, now I'm also feeling guilty about not going. And that's a huge thing for me with like setting boundaries too. Like I felt very guilty setting boundaries, being like, oh, sorry, I can't do this, or I can't go to that, being like, well, I want to help them, or I want to do this for them. Again, that's like that positive view of others, negative view of self, because it's like, oh, like even though it's like I have like, you know, if I were to be explicitly like, you know, I like who I am and I'm like secure in who I am, but there's these things that still come up, like when I don't set boundaries, or when I have loose boundaries with people and I just do things for them, I am doing a disservice to myself. That is literally an example of a negative view of self, which it sounds weird, because it's like I don't resonate with that, but I have to understand like that's what I'm doing. I'm doing myself a disservice by not setting that boundary, and that comes from things like, you know, shame, for like you feel bad for not doing this in the past, of like, oh, like, you know, feeling like people were disappointed in you, or those kind of things. Like it really doesn't help at all.
And not to cut you off again, but it also goes other way too, where like avoid like anxious people or people that have anxiety get anxiety at the fact that you've canceled plans on them, and they look forward to coming out. So it also applies both ways for people, just to know, like, and it can be a thing for other people, not just to be understanding of people that are anxious of like doing stuff, but the people that get anxious about the fact that you don't want to do something with them. But anyways,
totally.
Continue.
But just I definitely I definitely get that you know, like canceling plans, for example, then feeling like bad about canceling plans. And I definitely, like, I'm not saying I don't feel bad now, but since I am more self-aware about my anxiety and stuff like that, I feel like, obviously I feel bad, like I wish I wouldn't have to do stuff like that, but
you don't feel that shame.
I'm putting myself first at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because I have to.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like if everyone else leaves, like I got myself, so I gotta ride for myself. So
Exactly.
And that's like representative of a more secure attachment too.
Yeah. So yeah, just, you know, just try your absolute best to be as understanding as possible. And, you know, just not making people feel bad about it. Because that 1000% makes it so much worse and so much harder to deal with, for sure.
Yeah. And as someone like with that as well, if you do have that, it's about like doing the work for yourself too. Like it's not just on everyone else to just like, you know, my mentality has never been like, well, I'm just the way I am and that's it. You know, it's like you cannot have that mentality at all. That will not lead you anywhere. And it's also not about the other way either, where it's about you're just, you know, being harsh on yourself or whatever. Like it's about understanding that like the way you are, the way you react to things, it's literally beyond your control. It's not your fault, but it's what you got. So you have to like do the work like within yourself to also be aware of it too. Because you can't just like leave it up to other people to like just accept that and like, you know, work around you. It's about also being aware of that too. And I feel like that's something I'm trying to be more aware of too, is to like, if I can just be self-aware that this thing is happening, I can like say it then as well. And that can also help the situation get to a better place faster, because that other person can hear it directly from me of like, I'm feeling this way, or I'm like, I understand that I'm having these anxious thoughts right now. It's not something that I can change necessarily, those thoughts, but I'm vocalizing it in a way that will hopefully help you understand that this is what's going on with me, right? Because it also can separate the like the personalness of it too. I feel like that's a big thing for me too, is like feeling like things are personal and like towards me as, or my character or whatever. And it's like, it really is not that deep. And I feel like vocalizing that can help separate and, you know, help the other person kind of like separate, you know, my anxious thoughts or my worries or these things that I'm vocalizing from like me as a person as well.
Communication. Literally.
Totally.
Communicate, because if you don't, then both parties, it's going to be slippery slope.
It really is a process, because you know, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of preparation to, you know, come out and tell someone like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and you know, I am feeling super anxious. So there's a lot that goes into it, for sure.
And even for the people receiving it, like taking your ego out.
It
can be really hard sometimes for people to receive things that need to be told and in part of the communication and stuff. So it's for both sides. You have stuff to work on, and I feel like with that was kind of a nice like chat. It was intimate and cute, and I really enjoyed that. Do you guys have any other like bits and things that you'd want to chat about? Or
I mean, I was just thinking like this entire episode was just about anxiety.
Yeah,
so we got more.
As soon as we were on, I knew like this was the.
I'm assuming we're just gonna have a whole separate one for something else. But, but that was nice.
It was lovely, and I hope you guys like this kind of more intimate and like serious talk, and we enjoy doing both things. So it was nice to kind of have like the cool, comfy, you know, vibe that we have, and like really feel it during this convo.
Yeah, for sure.
And I hope you guys like this episode, and you can catch us on our next one on all of our platforms at Talking to Talk Pod.
We will see you then.
Bye.
Bye.